Welcome to the Dear Entitled Radio Show with your hosts Nick Beardsley and Javi Mello.
What's going on, everyone? I'm Nick Beardsley, and this is my co-host Javi Mello, and you're listening to Dear Untitled Radio. Today, if you're involved in the alt music scene or mainstream radio at all, this guest really shouldn't need an introduction, but we're grateful to have him on. Legendary producer, Joey Sturgis. Thanks for coming on today, dude.
Hey, thanks guys for having me. I'm happy to be here with you too, and with your audience, and to talk about music, which is something that we all love. And yeah, I'm just excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome.
Right on.
So for the people who don't actually know who you are, they definitely live under a rock. Can you give us a brief synopsis, kind of your background and getting into production?
Yeah, it's an interesting story because I've been in a musical. I was born into a musical family. My whole family either sings, plays guitar, different instruments, etc. Even like my extended family, right? And so music has sort of always been just a part of our lives, not something that you really looked at as a job or a career or anything like that. I mean, we would just, it'd be a Thanksgiving. Everybody would come to my grandpa's house. We'd be all huddled around the piano, just singing songs and stuff. It was a very normal thing.
That's cool.
And I've been playing drums and guitar since like 8 or 9. Even before, actually, I started playing drums when I was like 7 or 8, and then I got in this band when I was 9 years old, and like everyone in the band was like 25 and up, and I was like just this 9-year-old kid back behind the drum set.
Wow.
It was, and we played shows, like we played the Red Cross benefit, and there was like 3,000 people there, so like I was exposed to a lot of stuff like that, like really early on in life. And my uncle was a country music producer in Nashville, Tennessee, and he would actually come up to family functions like Thanksgiving, Christmas, come to my grandpa's house. We'd all jam. And, my mom and dad were in a band, and on the weekends, I'd be at some show, running around as a little kid, just going wild. And so it was kind of like just part of my destiny, right? Like there's just kind of no way I was going to escape that. But when I really had the ability to kind of decide for myself, like what I wanted to do, I was really into video games and I was really into computers. And of course, there's some crossover there, like with the computer, you get your first recording program, you mess around and you make some little, songs of your own and stuff. And I did some of that, but I liked the computer because I could program and I could play video games, or I could program my own games and have my friends play them and stuff like that. So that was the path that I was kind of going down in middle school / high school. But then, as you become get closer to that 18 years of age, you start to look for different types of freedom. And so kind of got away from the video game stuff and kind of got back into the band thing. And it's kind of been always this back and forth, like, I'm in a band. Okay, no, I'm back to programming. And I had this like epiphany where this one day I was working at this computer shop. It's like the only real job that I ever had is I worked at a computer shop, like repairing computers and doing like, building computers and doing troubleshooting and stuff like that. And we went to this treasurer's office, and they had like a printing problem. And that day was unusual because we had 2 service calls at the same time. So my boss drove me to one service call, dropped me off, went to the other service call. And I'm in there, and I'm fixing the printer, and I'm done with the job, and I print the invoice up, and I send it, and I hand it to him. I remember looking down the invoice, and I was like thinking to myself, okay, I'm the only person here. I did all the work. We're charging him $70. I'm getting paid $6. There's something wrong with this.
Very.
And that's when I kind of couldn't bring myself to accept that situation anymore. I thought too highly of myself. Like I couldn't, it was like I literally like couldn't go to work after that. Like I was calling in sick. I was doing everything I could to avoid going in there. Meanwhile, on the weekends, I'm recording bands because it's just, there's nothing to do.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of people to record with. So I'm making like what I would make during the week, I was making on the weekend. And I was like, I think if I did this full time, I could make a lot more. And that's kind of how it began.
Wow.
It was really an accident. It was like, the whole point of all this really was to just like get my band on shows because I was a drummer in a band, and we thought, okay, well, if we record these artists, like
Yep.
maybe like that'll be an opportunity for us to then go on play shows with them or even go on tour or whatever. And that's kind of how it started, but then it just quickly snowballed out of control. It was like band after band after band. I didn't even have time to go to band practice or even think about writing songs. And all the bands really wanted from us was to record anyways. They had no interest in playing the shows with us. So it's kind of like where it all began.
Wow.
I know that I did a little bit of digging from like past interviews and stuff, Joey. I do know that you along the way somewhere you recorded the Devil Wears Prada, and that's kind of how you got that break in. But I know on MySpace people were hitting you up, so I come from that same MySpace era.
Yeah.
I just didn't know anything about audio then, I got into audio engineering a tad late myself. I'm also a faithful subscriber of your Nail the Mix stuff, and
That's cool.
yeah, it's taught me so much, man. And but I came from that era, and most of the audio engineers in my era, when I was doing the band stuff, they would all ask you, "Oh, like, are you looking for like a Sturgis mix?" And it was like the funniest thing. And I'm like, "Who is Sturgis? Let me check this out." And I was like, "Oh shoot, I get it. It makes total sense now, man." So it's funny, man.
Yeah, I mean the way that the Devil Wears Prada thing came about is we actually played a show with them. Yeah, like we played a few shows, it wasn't like completely barren, but I just remember that being this one of the strangest things because, we're this band called Coraline, and we're a metalcore band, hardcore band, if you will. And we would practice in this house, and across the street from the house was a coffee shop. And this coffee shop is not small. Like it's a huge coffee shop. Like, I'm talking like pool tables and like multiple floors. It's huge.
Wow.
And they would do shows in the top floor, which was like big enough to have like, I don't know, let's call it 7,500 people.
Okay.
And we played shows there like pretty often. And I would always go, down from the house across the street, go to the coffee shop and pick up the flyer to see like who was going to be there that weekend. And I saw one weekend on the same day that we were going to play, it had a band on there called the Devil Wears Prada. And I go, what kind of freaking band name is that? So
Big facts. Yeah.
So we played the show. I think they were after us, if I'm not mistaken. And I was just like entranced by their set because they were just doing shit that nobody was doing right there. And so I had CDs already made up, just because we hand CDs out all the time. And I remember coming up to them after their set, and I was like, "Hey, I just want to introduce myself. My name's Joey Sturgis. I'm the drummer in one of the bands that played earlier, but also I record. Here's a CD of the music that we're working on right now. And I did all the work. I did all the recording and mixing on it. So, yeah, just let me know if you guys ever want to work together." And they never really got back to me. So I kind of followed up for about 6 months, and they had this sort of excuse, which was like, "Oh, well, that's cool and everything, but we kind of want to just figure out how to do this for ourselves, and we want to like record ourselves at our practice space, blah, blah, blah." But I just was pretty persistent. I was like, "Listen, man, I'm going to make you a deal that you cannot refuse. I come here, I'm going to charge you $80, and in like 3 days, we're going to record your demo, and if you don't like it, then whatever. You just lost $80. It's not a big deal. If you do like it, then maybe we can work together a little more." And so yeah, they took the deal. They were also trying to pay me more, and I was like, "Nope, I'm sticking to my deal. Just pay me $80." And yeah, the rest, they got signed. The rest is history.
I love it. You kept it
Wow.
honest. You're like, "Nope, we said 80. We're sticking to this." That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Wow.
It's a great.
At that point, it was like I knew I had to work with this band. It was like there was like something calling me, like, "Joey, if you're not a part of this, you're gonna miss out on something so huge." And I dropped I quit the band, dropped everything I was doing. I was like, "I'm just gonna do this," and that was a good move.
Yeah, it was your gut telling you, man. Sometimes it's like that. It is like that. Sometimes like you'll get this weird voice in your head says
Yeah.
you need to do this. If you don't, you will regret it. And I have passed up on an opportunity like that once, and yes, I regretted it for years after that.
Yeah.
It was terrible. But yeah,
It's it's always interesting with, especially with bands, because you kind of can, you get that feeling, obviously. As musically inclined, you're like, hey, I see you going somewhere. And for you to have that, obviously you started music basically when you started walking, walking and talking, you were engrossed in it. So like, for a lot of people, I think you had a head start on that. So by that time, you were ready to be like, yeah, let's go. That's awesome.
Yeah, and they just had such a thing going on that, you could go to any show at that time and they're kind of all pretty much similar situations, like, the sort of the way the bands would move around on stage, or like with the kind of music they were playing. But this band was like totally different than anything, It was like,
Yeah.
damn, like they got keyboards, they got sound effects, they've got breakdowns, they've got chorusy parts, they've got a singer, they've got a screamer, they got, back then, like that was just like the full package. And I was like, I need to be doing that. This is like a way for me to show all the things that I'm capable of doing in the studio, because they have all this stuff that I'm going to be able to do like better than most people, at least in my mind. That's how I was thinking. And so, yeah, it was perfect, man, at perfect time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Start of an era right there, honestly.
That's the mentality,
Yeah.
obviously, to grow into what you and your brand have become. That's the mentality you need to keep. Of, I'm pretty sure I could do this better than someone else. Let's gung ho, give it a shot. So with it obviously spanning so many years of being a producer, can you give us your definition of what a producer is in the music industry? It starts to get blurred a little bit, especially with, the DIYs doing their own thing, and like, what is it? Does someone do both? Can you, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Man, the definition has been really redefined over the
Yes,
last
it has.
20 years, I think that back in a time when the industry was a little more traditional, a producer's job really was kind of to be the dad figure of the album, if you will, just knowing how to guide the artist into the music that they want to create, how to set them up with the right people, how to make sure the project gets done the way that it needs to get done. That was kind of the traditional role, and in some cases is still the same role today. You have people like Rick Rubin is a great example of like exactly what he is. He's actually more of a grandfather to the record, right? Like he's coming in, kind of like watching over his grandchildren and making sure they're like doing their best work, right? And giving them that wisdom of like, that's probably not your best work, you might want to rethink that one. And then the artist is going, oh shit, grandpa doesn't like that song, so let me see. But now like you said, all the lines are blurred. A modern producer is really someone that does everything, all the way from even A&Ring a little bit, going out there, finding those bands that nobody's taking a risk on, scooping them up, help them redefine their sound, give them that first release, get them out there, do the recording, the editing, the mixing, the mastering, the full 9 yards. And I think I was one of the first people to kind of do that in an untraditional setting, which was basically a garage with like a computer and really nothing, no kind of real gear. I mean, we're talking stuff that came off the musician's friend truck, like a Behringer with a fake tube glued in the front of it. It's not even a real preamp, like we're talking like the worst of the worst stuff that you can get. But we did it. We made it work, and I made it work. And when I did that first Prada record, I didn't know how to do like drum sample replacement. So I literally by hand copy and pasted every single kick hit for the entire fucking album.
I saw that. Yeah.
How many hours did you spend doing that?
That took me like 9 days. And
that was without trigger or drumagog or anything, right?
No trigger, no drumagog. And the label was like, what's taking so long? Like, surely we should have heard at least a first mix by now. And I'm like, listen, I'm still copy and pasting kick drums, bro. Like, we don't even talk about a mix. Like we're not there yet. So that was the kind of the start of it. It was like just I learned that like my thought process was like, surely this isn't how you make a record. And then like I would come to find out every time I thought had that thought that it was. It was like, surely you don't sit down and copy and paste every hit. Well, yes, you do. Surely you don't edit every single guitar riff. Oh yeah, you do. Surely you don't have like a singer who can't hit the pitch. Oh, that happens all the time. And you know, I kind of just learned like over time and through recording lots of different people from different places that really the difference in the quality and the difference in the final product was what the producer would do with what they were given. And that's when I learned how to take people basically what I say is to a superhero level. You come in as let's call it a C level guitarist. I make you sound like an A+ level guitarist. No mistakes in your recording at all. Everything's perfectly on time. Everything's in pitch. You're really loud in the mix, you know. And I think that mentality was not there. I just don't know if that was there in the industry because it was almost like producers had this opposite mentality. It was like you suck and I'm gonna just record you for what you are, and like I don't know where that came from, but that just kind of was like how it worked back then. And especially in the studios that used like analog gear and tape and all that kind of shit. It was all about like street cred or pride or any of that stuff. And the way that I looked at it is like, I just want to make a product that sounds so good that nobody can talk shit about it. Like when you listen to it, it's like, yep, that's good. And so I spent hours and hours and days just obsessed over perfection and trying to get to that level. And I think that's what made the difference. And that's, even though I was given horrible tools and not even the best environment to work in, I still made it work just with that obsession. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And I feel also that mindset, right, that you had there at that time, Joey, was basically in a way, once your stuff started to come out, and I'm not saying your stuff was the catalyst for it, but I feel like a lot of other like software developers started to come out with tools to facilitate what you were doing. I feel maybe you start to find these things right after, and you start to see how like, why shouldn't you give the artist the best product that you can give them, regardless of whether they can play amazingly or not. I mean, it's your name behind it, right? Like you are marketing yourself as a producer. At least that's my approach at it. I'll do everything like the best that I possibly can to make them sound as clean and as big as possible or whatever as the process goes on. And that was one of the first things that when I started to listen to producers work from like your like from where you started and other guys that were kind of doing the same thing at the same time or a little after. That's the mentality I adopted as well. So I was super like into that, which brings me to another point. So I know that you, eventually now you've branched out into the whole like software making, like VST making and plugins and all that stuff. I guess plugins is the easiest way of saying it. All the audio plugins and suites and all this cool stuff you have. I'm even using one right now on the podcast to cover my vocals. So I'm using your gain reduction plugin to get my levels going.
Cool. That's super meta.
Yeah.
It's so meta.
It is.
Yeah, it really is.
He told me that when we were doing prep questions. I was like, yo, that is
I mean, dude, I have no shame saying that. Realistically speaking, like it's so easy to use it, dude. It's one knob go, Yeah. I think that, from all the struggling that you had to do, like when you first started, fucking copying and pasting a bunch of kicks and stuff, you've realized now how to make shit work quick. Like, here's this plugin, does everything. You shouldn't need anything else. Go ham, So my question to you is like, how's it been, like that transition going into the audio plugin side? What got you there? Like, how did you realize that's something you want to explore as well?
Well, when I was recording bands, and I really in the thick of it, I'm talking back-to-back records, like no days off, doing 10 records a year.
Oh yeah.
I noticed a trend that at first was very frustrating and annoying to me, and that was having sort of like every band would come in and there'd always be this one guy that's like, "What are you doing? Like, what EQ are you using?" And I'm like, "Get back there and be the bass player. Stop asking me all these questions." And I wanted to focus on like making an album and being a producer and not having to like share my secrets or even just my thoughts with these people. Like I wanted them to be the musicians and me to be the producer. And the more and more I pushed on that idea, the more it like kind of pushed back. And I realized that there was kind of like nothing I could really do about it. So I started to embrace it a little bit, and I had to shift my mindset on how I thought about it. So my bright idea essentially was I was recording, we came as Romans, and we had set out to do this very epic drum production for this album. Is going to be like very, very detailed so that you could hear every single little splash hit and every single little note that he's playing there on the drums. And so in order to make that possible, I had sampled his entire kit just to make my own drum instrument just for myself, so that like once we had finished tracking, I'd be able to go back in and edit anything I want, change fills, and not have to like have him play again. And you can tear down the kit and we'll be fine. We can do the album however we want. And once I finished the album, I realized, okay, well, I made this drum sample instrument. I'm never going to use it again, because the next band that's going to come in, we're just going to start all over. We're going to make a whole new drum sample instrument, and we're going to do a whole new drum sound. And I'm like, what else could I be doing with this? And so like I started a drum sample store back when this is before like Shopify and before Big Cartel and all these like off the shelf solutions that allowed you to do this. I freaking did this manually, bro. Like
It's like through Dropbox, right? Or something like that?
It was I found like a PHP like part system called ZenCart.
Wow.
And I like programmed my own shopping experience and everything. It was like insane. Rad. So, and I'm uploading also the other thing is that somehow I figured out how to transfer like that many gigs of files over the internet, like through a paid transaction. That was like something that wasn't even a thing either. Like I had to figure out how that would work as well. And I started small. I remember the first thing I put on there was like a little sub drop sample, and I put it for just $5 just to see, like, whatever. Posted on the Facebook forum, and you wake up the next day and you got $1,200 in sales, and you're like, what the hell is going on here? So then I was naturally like, okay, well, what can I do? What else can I do?
Yeah.
So that's when the drum sample, I'm like, oh, well, I've got this drum samples thing that I made for myself sitting on my library. I'm never going to use it again. Might as well just like throw it on there and put it like for $50 or $30 or something, see what's going to happen with that. And then that did well, and then it just became like, okay, well, every time a band comes in, I'm just going to make a drum sample library. It's going to be different because it's a new band with a new drum set.
Yep.
And I'll just keep doing that, and I'll just keep releasing those. And so, that's kind of how it all started. And then this is the same time when social media started to really break out. You had these different types of social media, like Twitter came on the scene. And I'd always been one of those early adopters. Like as soon as Gmail was available, I had like one of the first accounts. Like as soon as Twitter came out, I had a Twitter account. As soon as Facebook opened up all their signups to people who weren't in college, I was on there.
Yeah.
And so with that early adoption stage, I was just kind of always first to the platform and always using it. Like I would use it daily. I would just be part of my mindset would be like, okay, I'm going to wake up, going to do a tweet, a Facebook post, and then get back to work. And
wow.
Through that, I was building up an audience without even really realizing it. I just thought, oh, it's a cool platform. You can like collaborate and talk to people, and that's cool. Well, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Also, one of the first people to make vlogs. I was vlogging in the studio in 2007, 2006 on YouTube. One of the first studio vlogging accounts on YouTube.
Yeah.
My whole mindset there was literally just like, okay, this band is going to get a lot of eyeballs on them because they're making an album, and I want people to realize that I'm part of the process, like a big part of the process. And the only way I knew how to control that, because I couldn't control what they were posting on their accounts, and I didn't even want to like bother to ask. So I was like, I'll just do it. I'll make all the content myself. I'll edit it. I'll upload it. It'll be on my channel. It'll be my content. And all I would do is just ask the band, hey, are you okay with me like occasionally filming little clips and stuff? And they'd be like, yeah, sure. And dude, that was all I needed to do. And I kept up with that over the years, and it built up quite a sizable audience, to the point that people started to reach out to me and say, hey, man, how are you getting those guitar tones? Like, how are you getting those bass tones? And it became so many requests and so many tweets and emails. I got annoyed by it. So I did the same thing that I did with the drums. I was like, well, I'll just sell the presets and partly the knowledge as well. Like, here's how I made this guitar tone, and then here's the preset for it. Like, you can buy it for $19 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I started Joey Sturgis Tones. And it started out with the tones were literally the tones that I was making, and did that for a couple years. And then eventually, one day my friend calls me up and he's like, hey man, you're killing it. Got all these albums that you're doing. You got these drum samples, these tones. You should do a plugin. And I was like, dude, I don't think I should do a plugin. Like, that sounds really crazy and hard. Like, you gotta have to compile like all these formats for all these different operating systems, and then you're gonna have to test each one. And I don't even have Pro Tools. How am I gonna test it on Pro Tools? That was like what was going through my mind. And so I wrote it off. I was just like, nah, I'm not gonna mess around with this. I'm too busy anyways. I have all these albums to do. And I hit like a little bit of a rough week, like just a band canceled, and then there's like, I don't know, some other shit going on, and then finally I was like, all right, well, I kind of have nothing to do now for at least for 7 days. I'm gonna play around with this plugin stuff. So yeah, that was the birth of gain reduction. That was the very first thing I tackled. I was like, I want to make a vocal compressor that's better than all the ones that I use, and so I sat there for couple weeks, couple months, just messing around with it. And yeah,
Wow.
And like I said, it wasn't like I learned how to do all that in a short period of time. I learned how to program when I was a kid. I was programming my own video games when I was like fucking 17 or whatever. So
awesome.
So like I knew how to write code, and I just had to learn like, okay, well, what are the like unique things about doing audio processing? Like, what code goes into that? And it's basically just a bunch of math. And so yeah, that's kind of like how it all began. And then that first plugin I made was gain reduction. It was Windows 32-bit for Cubase 6.5, and like that's all it would work on.
Specific. I love it.
Yeah, and I put that out, and that it crushed like immediately as soon as I launched it on the forum. Like, everybody bought it, and then that's when I was like, okay, now I have a real problem on my hand. Like, I actually need to go find like a developer, get this compiled for Windows or for Mac, and Pro Tools, blah 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 blah. And that's a whole process in and of itself that I decided, okay, this is not something that I want to take on myself. But I would still want to like control the designs, run the company, and do the content and that kind of stuff. And that's where it all began. Yeah.
That's awesome. I remember getting tipped off about the gain reduction plugin in like 2013, I believe. Maybe that's the year, or 14. My dates might be a little wonky, but it was through your Creative Live thing that you did. Yeah. Buddy of mine said, hey, you should check this out. He's kind of using this like cool ass plugin. Like, I'm like, oh, fuck, I need to get this. It's sick. Like, it's covering so many things that I can just replace soon. So
I'm funny. I remember being on set of Creative Live, and we were in a break, and like we had worked out a deal with them that everybody who bought the class was going to get like the gain reduction deluxe plugin, which was like at the time a new update that we hadn't launched yet. And like I was like in between, filming sessions, like on the phone talking about like, okay, is the lo-fi switch working? Like, did you get rid of that popping noise that happens when you push? And we're like literally about to deliver the plugin to everybody, and like I'm waiting on the final build to come to my email and stuff.
Oh my gosh. Man, your brain is just, it's code, and it's basically plugins and drums. I mean, maybe the drums beat everything else into your head. That's great. I'm very impressed at how much everything just has built upon itself for you. It almost comes, too. It feels like it came naturally, but I know it was a ton of work.
Yeah, I do tell people there has to be an element of luck, because if you know my full life story, which we won't have time to tell here today, there's so much crazy stuff in it and I don't understand how it all unfolded, but I'm just so blessed, and I feel so grateful to be where I am. And that's why I really tried to like position myself in a place to where I can just pass the torch, because I feel like I was blessed with such a amazing journey, and I'm still on that journey, obviously, but I was given so much in such a compressed amount of time that I felt almost like it's my responsibility to like make it easier for others, like to build products for people to like be able to embrace their creativity in ways that was a barrier before.
Right.
Pass on that not just inspiration but the information as well, the education on how do you actually do this, or how did I do it, and what can you learn from that. And that's why we have those initiatives like URM Academy and Nail the Mix and Joey Sturgis Tones and Drum Forge. All that stuff is literally just an extension of my journey and passing on that torch to the next generation. And I'm happy to be a part of empowering those people to be able to chase their dreams and make awesome music. That's really how I align myself with my day to day. It's just like, as long as I'm awake and I'm helping people make great music, I think I'm in the right place.
Absolutely.
That's the dream, man. That's literally, I feel like every budding musician, engineer, producer, that's their dream, is to just make or help make great music. That's cool.
Yeah, 100%. And in your mentality there, it shows, because it's in succession, right? Because the band dropped on you, you were able to pick up and do the gain reduction, but because you were coding games when you were 17, you were able to code this. And, it's like a succession. This is what I've noticed from what you've been telling me.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. And you waste no time. I see that already. Like, you are go, 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 go. You're full throttle like 100% of the time, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. We're right in the middle of a launch that's coming up not next week, but a couple weeks from now.
Already.
I'm like in between testing, just do this episode and then go back to testing, because we're in the what do you call it, the 11th hour here. So wish us luck.
Oh, best of luck.
Yeah,
definitely.
Definitely. So, well, we won't waste too much more of your time, but as is the central focus of Dear Untitled Radio, we love digging into guest musical influences and see which tracks along your journey. After hearing the journey, we love to hear what tracks helped bring you along. So you gave us a couple. The first one was Eyeless by Slipknot. Slipknot, obviously, when we've been talking to artists, has been top on most people's lists. They formed such a movement in their own right. But how do you feel about that song?
I have so much to say about it, but I'll try to condense it. It's hard to explain like that time, because that was such a magical transition time for metal, for modern production, for just for Roadrunner, for the band, obviously, even for Ross Robinson, right?
Yeah.
And also a pivotal time for me as a young music listener growing into I graduated in 2003, so let's see, in 1999 I would have been like 15, 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of me coming into my adolescence of music taste. And I had a unique experience with that, because my cousin is older than me, and he was always one step ahead when it came to music. So, I'd be this 14-year-old driving around my town with my cousin, and he'd be listening to Meshuggah. And I'm like the only 14-year-old kid that even know, like, I go to Ozfest and I know every breakdown, and I'm like, everybody in the crowd doesn't know how to headbang to Meshuggah yet, but I'm like, I know
Joey Sturgis invented headbanging. You heard it here first.
That was just like I'm trying to paint that picture, right? Like that, I'm like the 14-year-old in the crowd, like headbanging and the time signature that they're playing, and everybody else is just kind of like not really sure how to do it.
Right.
And Slipknot was not my favorite band. Like when I first heard Slipknot, I was like, I don't get this. And I didn't like it. But man, it only took about 2-3 weeks, and then I came back to it because my friend just kept trying to push me to it. He's like, dude, you got it. I don't understand how you don't like Slipknot. Like, listen to it again.
Peer pressure.
So, yeah, man. 3 weeks later, I kind of dig into it. I'm like reading the lyrics as I'm listening, and I'm like really kind of trying to absorb it. And something clicked. I don't know what it was, but I think maybe that third or fourth listen was kind of where I might have started to hear like the Ross Robinson in it, because I was a huge Korn fan. I loved Limp Bizkit. Like we played Korn and Limp Bizkit songs like when we would play live. So I was very familiar with that stuff, but I couldn't hear like what, you know, it just sounds noisy and there's a lot of screaming and noisy screaming and not a lot of melody. But then I something clicked. I heard that Ross thing to it, and I heard how it was kind of like special in its own way, and it was like almost like a new thing. And then I was fucking hooked, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't put that record down, dude. And I knew every damn fill and the whole thing from front to back and every word. And I can still, whenever those songs come on, I can sing every freaking word, all the rapping parts, everything. Like it's so ingrained in my brain.
Yeah.
And I think that record also, and that song in particular, will always represent the pinnacle of that time period of what was the best thing happening right then, and it was that stuff. It was that band, the
That's
energy
incredible.
in there, you know, how Ross really just approached it like, I just got to record this band for what they are. You know, it's not about putting them on the grid. It's not about tuning them or any of that stuff. It's just kind of like, let me represent them the way that they need to be represented, with a little bit of aggression, but it's a little bit raw, and it's heavy, but it's fast, but it's articulate, it's clear, like I don't know, all that shit like just it was so perfect. So that's a great first track for me, because it really inspired me in a lot of different ways. And I'm a huge Ross Robinson fan. Love everything that he pretty much does.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, Slipknot's been influential for everyone,
A
and
while, man, for me too.
just yeah, it's defined a lot of taste and transitioned a lot of taste. Just boom, right in that time period. Just like you, there's a slew of people. Like you said, your friend was pushing you to get back into it. You're like, but there was just that movement. That's cool.
It's good. It's a good friend.
It is a good friend. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, if you're listening to this, you're not going to believe who I'm working with next. It's going to blow your mind.
Oh, buddy, this is
I
exciting.
can't reveal it, but
Well, we'll
I'm
know.
excited.
We'll
I'm
notice
excited.
soon enough.
enough.
yeah, you'll find out if you
Yeah.
follow me somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So the next track you gave was Paper Cut Skin by the Matches. And I personally, I don't know if I've ever listened to the Matches, but I put it on and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I'm going to go check them out like more. What was it about that song?
Feldman, baby.
Yeah, it's Feldman, baby, and it's Feldman when he was like, and not to say that he's not on fire now, but dude, that guy was on fire
Yeah.
when he was putting it out. And I just remember this being one of the first recordings that I had ever heard where I was in a constant state of shock at pretty much every turn of the song. It was like such an incredible production, and the mix was even incredible as well, that kind of like put me in a state of like, I don't even understand how to start. I don't even know where to start to remake this. Like I couldn't even wrap my head around it, how it worked. It was like the guitars progressively get louder and louder in the song, but then they don't drown anything out. And then at the very end of the song, they're like super fucking loud and in your face, but then you can hear everything clearly, and you can of course always hear the vocal. But then like there's all these twists and turns, and there's like these crazy moments that just like jump out. And like I just remember like that crazy string rakes, the string rake sound that goes into the very last hit.
Yeah.
And like the song goes down and then jumps up and like explodes and does all these different things. And my friend brought it in one day. It was showing me something that, they were showing me this and a couple of other things. And man, I was just like, dude, thank you so much for showing me that, because I probably never would have heard of this or known about it. And it kind of opened my eyes to like, this is going to sound like so stupid, but it like opened my eyes to like automation. When I was listening to that, I was like, man, there's so much automation in this. Like he's like turning the guitars up and then turning them down, and then like the vocals get louder, but then another vocal comes in on the side, and then there's like a guy laughing in the background. Yep. And I was just like, it was like overload, and it really like kind of opened my mind to like, okay, a production for a song that is basically just 3 or 4 chords. And I don't know that to be true about that song, but this is my mindset, is like, okay, well, it could be a lot more. Like you can make a song that just has 4 chords, but you can do all this cool shit with it, and it could be a journey, and you can tell a story sonically with different sounds and different sound effects. And so I got a lot of inspiration from that track, and still to this day, like I use that song to like test stereos because it just something about how it's mixed just jumps out of speakers, you know, and it's like a really good way to be like, all right, let me see what's going on with this new stereo system or these new monitors, you know.
Dude, that's amazing. That's really cool, and it makes sense. I have to say, I really admire how your brain works, and just like I hear this, oh my god, I have to deconstruct. Like, let me pick that like down to the core, and it just everything makes so much sense. Again, back to plugins, back to the building blocks. You're like, I need to digest it in these pieces, and now I'm going to be an expert at it. You know, I'm going to do it better than what they did, and that's. Again, I have to definitely say I admire that. The next song I'm really excited for. It's "If Today Was Your Last Day" by Nickelback. Obviously, I loved seeing you put Nickelback on the list because
Thank you.
They're yes, thank you. Javi and I are big supporters, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's the controversial band out there, but they slap.
Dude, from a production point of view, like, come on. Like,
Right.
how could you just not like this? I mean, I also like their songwriting. Like, I'm a rock guy, man, so I'm very into the songwriting too. But how did this inspire you, man? I want to hear your thoughts.
Well, this came at a time period where like a lot of people were going nuts over Nickelback's album before. I'm gonna forget the name of it. If you could look that up real quick, that might
Absolutely.
help me. It was the one that was going nuts, right? That had the Photograph single on it.
All the right reasons.
All the right reasons.
Yep.
Thank
You
you.
beat me to it.
So All the Right Reasons comes out, and everyone's freaking out about that. And when I listened to All the Right Reasons, I was like, not quite. It's not quite there. Now, I love Nickelback, and I love that album, and I still listen to it, and I think it's fucking great.
Right.
But something about the mix and the production wasn't quite there for me. And then Dark Horse came out, and it was Mutt Lange, and it was Mike Shipley, and it was Chad Kroeger, and it was Nickelback. And I was like, holy shit, this album cannot get any better. Like, the guitar tones, the drum samples, the mix, I just don't even know where to, the bass, the low end, how it's dark, but it's also bright at the same time. It doesn't make any sense. Like, it blew my mind when I first heard it, like legitimately blew my mind. And I was so like angry because I was like, that's at the height of my like figuring out how to really make like competitive mixes, right? I was working with like Oceano at the time, and they're this like death metal band, and of course everything's got to be super extreme, like the craziest kick sound, fucking blast beats, and quad tracking drop A sharp guitars and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And at the time, I actually kind of didn't think about it, but Nickelback was in A sharp, so it's kind of the same thing. And I was like, I don't know how they're doing this. Like, it's pissing me off. I don't even know what to do to a kick drum to like get it to this place. So yeah, it was just this very almost competitively inspiring thing. I would just always benchmark that record. It's like, okay, does my mix even come close to this? Let's find out. Let's take a listen, Also, that's when I felt like the songs kind of locked in. They were a little bit darker on that record. But If Today Is Your Last Day, it's definitely like the ballad of all ballads when it comes to like rock ballads, and doing it in a way that doesn't feel, I mean, it's a little cheesy, but it's almost like Bryan Adams, like, but a little heavier. So I don't know, it kind of works. And obviously it's Mutt Lange, which is just, I'm a huge Mutt Lange fanboy, so I listen to all the Shania Twain records, like, everything that he's done, basically. I like his Maroon 5 record, which a lot of people don't. I get it. I get what Mutt Lange is doing, and I always even talked about doing things the Mutt Lange way, right? Like sitting there and recording a guitar part and recording each string on a separate track so that you can like take out all the harmonic noises that would be there and then layer them back together and then put them in a DI bus and then put the DI bus back into the amp sim and then do it back through another, you know what I mean? Like I was doing like crazy shit like that. And that's the kind of stuff that he was breaking down these records to almost a molecular level.
Wow.
And so that really inspired me. And but yeah, I wanted to put this song on because I was trying to think of like, I could probably do like the um I can't remember the first track, but it's super heavy. Like I was like maybe I could do like a heavy Nickelback song, but I was like, no, I want to actually put like a song where, you know, this song has like harmonies that I still don't understand to this day. Like if I was going to write this song, I don't know how you would come up with those harmonies, but they just have that magic
Yeah.
songwriting ability, you know.
What
So
was it?
yeah,
I'd Come For You? Is that what it?
that's a more ballad one.
Oh,
That's
okay.
even more ballad than this one. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
the heavy track is it's the very first track. What's it called?
On that record,
I
Yeah.
thought that was the first track. There's
Was it?
Something in your mouth.
oh yeah, Something in Your Mouth. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's second track actually. Yeah. But
yeah.
Yeah, now that's a heavy track. Like
That riff is crazy.
yeah.
yeah,
Man.
and that's kind of where I was like, damn, dude, these guitar tones slay, man. And I don't
Yeah.
think people they don't realize it, dude. Everyone sleeps on this record. Listen to it from front to back. It has a new guitar tone in every song. They don't repeat the guitar tone once. And every single tone is amazing. And it's all down-tuned guitars, but then it's like ballads and literally like mainstream hit top 40, top 10 songs in drop A. It's
I gotta re-listen to it now.
Yeah.
amazing,
Just 'cause
dude.
you said that.
Like,
I mean, just talking about, like you said, for like All the Right Reasons and Dark Horse, and I personally can go either way with the 3 album like slide of this is great Nickelback. You know, this is kind of what I grew up with as well, and it's like Dark Horse is, you know, pinnacle of that, I feel. So that's awesome. And I love Nickelback, so can't go wrong. And the
Can't go
Professional says you can't go wrong either. So Nickelback is certified.
there it is.
There you go, certified. But you know, it's crazy. I'm gonna listen back to that record again, Joey, because so sometimes like the songs are really good, they're catchy, they're groovy. You kind of like for me, at least, I kind of ignore a little bit of the sonics sometimes. I just get lost in the music.
Yeah.
And I've never paid enough detailed attention to the guitar tone, but now that you've said that, I'm gonna literally go back with a microscope and just analyze
Yeah,
this.
I mean, even
I'm
like
gonna go crazy.
the floor tom hits, dude, they're like sub drops. It's insane. Like people people are freaking sleeping on that record, man.
Oh my. And the final track you gave us was The Bird and the Worm by The Used, which, I mean, that's one of the more iconic, I feel
One of my
like,
favorite bands.
scene songs. The Used is great. What about that hits for you?
That's just another one of those songs, right? I was talking about like the paper cut skin, and it's kind of like a similar theme that we're talking about here with each of these songs, where it's like I just remember hearing that song. And actually, I think they had dropped a teaser for it. So when I heard the teaser, I was like, "Oh my god, this record is gonna be amazing!" Like, and then they did some behind the scenes footage, and it was Feldman. Feldman was sitting at like, I feel like he was sitting in a theater or maybe in a lounge or something, and they're like at CLA, and CLA is like mixing the record, and they're like, CLA like kicks them out of the room. And then he does a mix, and then he like brings them in the room, and they listen to the mix. It's like I just remember all those moments, and I was just like, yeah, kick those fuckers out of there because they're gonna just say some stupid shit, and you wanna get your thoughts down on paper first before you show your presentation. So I was kind of rooting for a lot of different reasons. Like I really connected with that material because of that, and because of like just being such a fan of Feldman at the time.
Yeah.
But then, like, when the song came out and I heard it, it was such a journey, and it had all these epic moments. And I was quite jealous of the fact that they were kind of doing what we were trying to do, which is like mix rock, metal, and symphonic orchestra / classical / cinematic stuff. But they were doing it with like real. I'm pretty sure they went and recorded like real strings, real orchestra.
sounded real.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And it was like one of those things where it's like, damn, I wish I had like the budget and the band to like do all that. But we would try to recreate it in the box. So it was very cool to hear like how far that could be taken. And he was like one of the first people to really kind of push that to the limit. and the Used is like the perfect band to do that with because they're just so like over the top when it comes to like the theatrical way that it sounds. And yeah, that just attracted me to it. And I like anything that's epic. Like that's a very easy sell for me. If you're just making like the most epic song on your album, like that's usually the song I like the most. Even though it might not be the hit, the single, or even the heaviest song or whatever, I go for epicness. And yeah, so that was like the most epic song like of the time, and it didn't get it was hard to beat for a while. So
Yeah, it's true. It's received many plays for me.
Well, let me ask you something, Joey. So, I know that we were talking about these songs and how they inspired you, even on the production level, and then you were talking about the Feldman stuff, like you just said right now, like "Bird and the Worm" was like very hard to beat and all that. Clearly, of course, I mean, you and Feldman are both top tier, world class dudes. Within your own right, you have your own sounds. You're both insane at what you do. Big fan of both of you guys. Do you ever struggle like when you hear like maybe like a John Feldman hit, like at that time at least, did you ever struggle with like massive imposter syndrome? Because I know I go through that shit nonstop, dude. Like it's an
yeah,
uphill battle, man.
100%, especially then. Now it's very diminished, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I
it does get
have
better.
it does get better.
Uh,
You know, I would encourage people who have that feeling to like basically learn your tools. Now that I'm a plugin developer, I kind of understand audio from like a really informed place, like almost at an electrical engineering level and a
Subatomic
science
level.
a science and physics level.
Some
Right.
molecules,
So
man.
because of that, I can tell you what's happening. I can listen to a track and kind of understand like, okay, you know, they've got like a white noise going through a filter that's got chorus on it with a little bit of reverb, and like that's what's creating that sound or whatever, right? Like
Gotcha.
that's not hard for my ear to discern. And that comes with the two combinations of doing like over 100 records in a 10-year period, which is what I did in my 20s with, and then also starting a software development company that builds plugins and actually has to figure out how to do some of those things like in the algorithms. And so
Yeah.
I'm capable of like kind of going both places with my brain and when I listen to something, and then having that creative artistic element too of like, oh, it would be so cool if you like put, you know, take a piano and reverse it, but then like purposely time stretch all the notes so it sounds really like ripped apart and like garbly and stuff. Like, you know, there's an art form to it, there's a science to it, there's a process to it, and that it's all beautifully melded together in audio production. And so yeah, I've just been inspired by those tracks, like mostly because those are those moments where you hear that and it goes, something in your head goes off. You're like, I've never heard that before, or that's blowing my mind right now. And that doesn't happen very often when you
Right.
get to a certain place in music, right? Like when you've heard almost, you feel like you've heard every effect that anyone will ever create. So I'm often going for those tracks that really shock me and
Yeah.
teach me something new, you know? And these are the ones that really did it for me in that time period. And the imposter syndrome is a normal thing. I think everybody feels it. I mean, I remember actually speaking with Feldman once, and he was having a little bit of. He didn't call it imposter syndrome, and you know, I'm not trying to out him for that, but I remember he was having a little bit of a rough day one time when he found out that, you know, somebody he had worked with was taking over a project that he wanted to work on, and it was kind of a struggle for him. And I was like, you know, I've gone through this as well because I've been a mentor to many people. And I told him, listen, dude, you should be proud because that guy is literally proof that you know what you're doing and that you know how to pass it on. And that's a living legend. You cannot cement yourself into a legacy any more than being that mentor that passes that on to someone. And I think he like kind of really shifted his mindset when I told him that. And he did that for me, but just like virtually, right? Like it wasn't even a direct thing, but it's such a beautiful, you know, music is like a language that we can all speak, even if it's not in English. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
it's an incredible thing that we all share, and it's basically the best way that we know how to transfer emotions from one person to another is through these sounds that we make, and it's so cool. So I'm just happy to be a part of it, and I'm inspired by it all. And yeah, these are the tracks that really kind of spelled it out for me, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
no, and
impactful.
right, and it's inspiring to see how like you're looking at that particular scenario that you just talked about with Feldman. That's a really positive way to look at things, and I'm actually going to take that with me from now on. That's really cool, man. So I'm actually really stoked that we had the conversation, this particular one, because of that, because that's something I can take away. I love taking away little usurps from whatever we do these podcasts
Yeah.
and stuff. That's really
Yes.
cool, and I do struggle with imposter syndrome from time to time as well. It's not every day. It has gotten a little easier for me, but it's great to know that it gets a little better as you go. You know what I mean?
Gotta build.
So yeah, I've been following your work for a hot minute, from when I was in a band all the way to me being like a full-time producer as well and all that. I noticed that you got back into it with the Conquer Divide stuff. Your sound changed a little bit. It's different. I still absolutely love it. In fact, I was very inspired by it. So I love to see what you did on the nail mix with it. That was awesome. The track spacer thing. Sick.
Yeah.
I noticed that you got back into it. What got you back into producing it? Because I thought, I when you went the plug-in route and the educator route, I was like, oh, well, maybe he's out for a little while. He just wants to pass the torch on. But then you got back into it, and dude, it's like you never left. It was just so hard hitting, man.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely needed a break.
Yep.
You're
I'm
talking
sure.
about a guy, dude. I lived with bands basically most of my life. Never really had like a moment to myself. Never really had a vacation.
Man.
There was a lot of sacrifice that went into building my career. And
Yeah.
I don't mean to make it sound like I went through these hard times or anything. That's not the case at all. I
I
could
get
have,
it.
yeah, but it was more like I just need a breather to figure out I guess just like where I want to fit in, because I kind of at that point, and this is around like when I was starting to think this way around like 2014, maybe even 2013. I was kind of thinking like, man, like, am I just gonna like keep making records like over and over and over again? Because at that point you make so many, and they start to become like a like a choreographed thing that you just kind of do, and there obviously there's some variables in there, but it just starts to seem like it's the same thing. And there's a few different factors that kind of pushed me into it. I mean, number one, like I actively record and produce my wife's band, which is called Conquer Divide. They're an all-girl hard rock band from all over the world, and they've got a new record coming out here pretty soon that we just wrapped up.
We're excited for it. Yeah.
It's
I love the singles they've been putting out, man.
Yeah.
dude.
Every
This
single one is just crazier.
this record is next level. I know everybody says that shit, but man,
No, I believe you.
tell you
Big things
much of
coming.
yeah. But like I can't explain to you how much of a transformation my wife has made, because she's the main songwriter, and it's just amazing to watch her go from that stuff that came out. I don't remember what year that was, 13, 14, 12, something in there.
Yeah.
Chemicals.
That first Conquer Divide record.
Oh, no, the first
The
one.
first
before
one. It
that.
was probably like
yeah.
13, 12, 13. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that record was great too.
So to go from that, which is its own thing, to where they are now, and you'll hear this on the next record, is like literally like, and I'm not trying to like scare people away. It's night and day. It's like a full cycle growth of just amazing like songwriting and all this stuff. So and the production's next level. Like it's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's partly her. It's partly the fact that I've had enough time to get away from feeling jaded about like the way that I was treated earlier on in my career, which I have nothing to complain about, but at the same time, like there were some missteps where I should have had some producer agreements that would have given me some royalties that just never got those, because I just didn't know. I didn't understand how the music business really worked. I was just taking a paycheck. Labels would just give me a large sum of money, make a record, move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So I felt a little bit of I had a rough relationship with me and producing, me and getting into that world again, feeling like I had been somewhat abused in the sense that, no one had helped me get those things that I deserved, especially being such a large part of many of the records that I worked on. But I can't complain because I have a software company now, and obviously none of that would exist if it weren't for all the stuff that I had done with my career. And so, like, in the end, it's a happy story, right? But part of it was I had to get away, and I had to see what I looked like when it wasn't just I'm the guy that makes the records. Like, and that's how all this stuff began. That's how URM Academy began. That's how JST really kind of took it to the next level. That's how Drumforge got started. I started to explore that entrepreneurial side of myself and step away from just making records every day to let me show you what else I can do.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I had the time to like get that started, get that going. It's going so well that it's a pretty well-oiled business that has been profitable since day one, completely bootstrapped, no debt, and very proud of what we've built. We have a really awesome team, and now because of that, I can kind of go back and make some records when I want to. And
hell yeah,
I'm currently, I'm just taking projects that I think make sense for me. I'm not trying to like, make a whole second income from this, and I'm also not trying to keep myself super busy. I just work on projects where I'm like, you know what, I think I can do this right, and I want to do it, and those are the ones I take. And for everything else, I just say, I'm gonna sit this one out.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, I just saw you while I was watching the Day feed. You guys just completed that record. Cannot wait to hear
Excited
that.
for that one too, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, everything you've been putting out, dude, since you came back. Basically, I call the comeback the Chemicals because this is the first mix I heard.
Yep.
I don't know if that's the first one, but that's the one I heard first. I thought it was crushing, dude. From then on, every time there's like a new mix coming from your camp, I'm like, I need to listen to this. And our buddies we had on the podcast, Until I Wake, I think they recorded either with you or with your
my engineer
Nick. Okay, that's it. And their record crushes too, dude, and we loved it. And I mean, all good things from that camp.
Good
dude.
buddies.
Good stuff.
I'm thankful to have Nick because he has been working for me for almost 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
And I've been a mentor to him as well, and he's my engineer. And the cool thing is that we just have such a language and a process and a setup that's so beautiful, how it's all seamless and how it works between me and him. So we're able to like really kind of mix. We mix everything together, but I don't do it like it's not like I do it in person with him. It's more like he'll do like the first pass, and then I'll go through the mix and I'll make adjustments with notes, and I send it back to him. And that first pass actually is even based on a template that we started back in 2012. Yeah, wow. 2012 I think is when we started that template, and we've been building on top of it, like album by album, bit by bit. And he never slowed down, man. When I took a break, he kept going with other bands, and then when I came back, I was like, bro, track spacer. And he's like, what? And we basically revamped the whole
that shit's
template.
Crazy, man.
Yeah, and
that blew my mind, dude.
Yeah, and now we have even crazier shit that we haven't told anyone about. But man. Yeah, it's cool.
All right.
Yeah. So we continue to advance the mix, and it's in a different way where like I come in with like sometimes the big moves where I'm like, okay, we're gonna use track spacer, we're gonna carve stuff out, and it's gonna work this way. And he's like, okay, cool, yeah, I understand that. And then we like use that for a while, and then we learn on that, and we were like, oh, maybe we need to do it like this way. And yeah, so it's just a beautiful, seamless like situation between me and him.
That's amazing. Just while we're in the quick topic of mentors and stuff like that, I know what you mean. I don't have the same exact relationship with mine, but I think it's a mutual friend of ours. His name is Kyle Odell. A dude basically gave me my career.
Oh yeah, I love Kyle Odell.
Dude's taught me everything I know from the ground up. My band recorded with him, and we just clicked. And I go to Nashville every once in a while to visit him, just to hang out. Maybe like sit in while he's doing the session just to kick it with him. No, I don't actually work with him or anything like that, but just a really good buddy of mine. And anytime I have like an audio question, much like you served for Nick, he does for me as well. So
yeah.
Badass, man.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's really cool.
Well, in closing, I typically ask where people can go to learn more about you, but as most people can do. Type Joey Sturgis into Google, and literally the first thing that comes up is, Joey Sturgis Tones and everything else. Drum Forge, Nail the Mix, URM.
All there, yeah.
Yeah, so you can obviously go look them up, but is there any like ideal spot people, you would direct people to, or check it all out?
Yeah, I mean, check out whatever you're interested in, because I kind of have all those different layers, right? But the one thing that, I'm really just kind of excited about sharing with people, while I'm kind of on this podcast tour, if you will, is I'm working on a new plugin. I'm not really giving away a lot of details, but we're going to first announce it on our Instagram, the Joey Sturgis Tones Instagram. So yeah, like just hoping that a lot of people will just take a second to check that out when we start talking about it here in the next couple of weeks. And otherwise, there's all kinds of cool shit, man. You want to learn how to mix, go to nailthemix.com. Want to check out some of my plugins, go to joeysturgistones.com. Get drum samples at drumforge.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's exactly everything. Thank you so much for coming on today, man. This has been incredible. And, until next time, for everyone listening, this has been Nick, Javi, and Joey. I wish Joey would come back. Maybe one day.
We'll see. Yeah.
So tune in next time on Dear Untitled Radio.
Dear Untitled, here for the artists supporting the creatives.